James Dobson said parenting isn't for cowards. There's a book actually written by him, and that's the title. And he's right. It isn't, because it's total learning curve. Okay, so my wife and I, we got married in mid, kind of late 20s. And I was, I'm in the healthcare profession and so on. And so we didn't have kids until early 30s. So, and our boys are, they're in their mid to 40 years old. So, but when our firstborn was born, like I was calling the hospital like almost every 2 hours, okay? Like I didn't know what I was doing. So the interesting thing is, but I had to realize that that's normal, all right? Like I wasn't inadequate, it was just the way it is. The learning curve is tremendous, and you just have to have adequate enough support, like having these things or a church or people you can connect with, right? So if you think you figured, so the thing about having kids is the first time you think you figured it out, just wait. Wait a week, and then it'll change again to something else, okay? Especially with teenagers, or 13, to 17. Also, I learned that the first 18 years, you push the record button. From 18 to later years, you push the play button. And so it's all about recording, and it's really what it's all about, because what comes after that is typically, they may not like the way you are when they're 15 years old or whatever it is. They want you to put a bag over their head if you're walking down the mall or something. But when they're older, they seem to copy what you do. So you just get ready for it. And then you could say, so children are like sponges. Parents, school, and church, parents especially, are the water that fills the sponge. And you got to realize that if a family has struggles, if you have a struggle with a child, it's really part of the package. And so let's learn what we need to do with that, all right? So take your sheets out, and we're going to start with this. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to go, there you go, from utero to birth. Now, so if there's a burning question, I could answer it right now, but otherwise we'll go to just write it down and we can talk about it later, and hopefully I'll answer it actually. So, okay, the reason why I wanted to go utero to birth is because people don't realize how much utero experience is. So, for example, the initial understanding of the world comes with acceptance, rejection, or peace and distress, or health and illness. So it's almost like that starts literally in utero. So the research has shown that children can know whether they're accepted or not starting with conception. And so if a child is in the womb, they will, whatever the mom is going through, the child will go through. If the mom is anxious, the baby's anxious. If the mom is depressed, the baby's depressed. And so the chemicals from that will come over to the baby. Now, help me out with this. I just want to make sure you get this. Whatever I say, don't go crazy like, oh goodness, all this stuff. I've ruined my kids. I can't believe what I did. Craig's telling me it's all healable, all right? I'm just giving you the background to know what to do about it, all right? So, for example, if the mom is a lot of anxious, I don't mean just anxious because you're moving somewhere, but I mean a lot of anxiety that's going on all the time. The anxiety, your adrenal gland produces adrenaline. Adrenaline is the fight or flight chemical, for example. And what happens is that adrenaline will wash over the baby, and the baby will then become anxious. And the baby will try to take the adrenaline from their adrenal gland, and when the mom gets rid of all hers and her adrenal gland, she'll go to the baby and take that. So the baby can literally be born with ADD, anxiety disorder, and just about hyper vigilant, just from that. If the mom and dad have a lot of problems and are fighting a lot, and there's a lot of chaos, the baby will sense that, In fact, there's a lot of research that the 6th month, the baby is a healing, seeing, feeling, sensing, seeing child. The baby can see light on the outside. The baby can hear what's going on. And so there is theories that breached birth, the baby will turn over and not want to go out to that unsafe world. Now, there's a lot of good things about it too, because, for example, if the mom, it's all about talking to the children, okay? It's all about talking to them and cuddling them and loving on them. And so what happens is you can, the more you do all that, the more they'll sense. You can have music, for example. There's plenty of stories about this where a gentleman that was like in his 30s was in his apartment playing the piano, a concerto piece, like by ear. His mom knocked on the door and came in, and he was playing, and she said, "Wow, that's so neat. Where did you learn to play that?" He said, "I don't know, I just kind of picked it up." And she thought about it. She says, "That is the piece that I played all the time when I was pregnant with you." So if you want to learn more about this, there's a book called The Secret Life of an Unborn Child. The Secret Life of an Unborn Child. It's by Thomas Varney. He's a doctor, and he has all the research about this. It's fascinating information about it. Okay, so when children are born, they're born with temperament. Now, this is where it also goes into what you're dealing with now, whatever age. So we're born with temperament. All right, temperament is strong-willed or compliance. That's basically what we're born with. So we take that, and then it's really kind of an emptiness, empty, like a suitcase. There's not a lot there except the temperament. So we take that temperament, and then we take that into the environment. But here's the issue. It depends on what the mom and dad know what to do with that temperament. So if they're a hyperness, or they're not compliant, or there's just a lot going on in there because of whatever transition they're going through, or with the kids, or wanting attention and so on. How do the parents deal with that? And I'll get to this a little later. You've got to always look at, how do I relate to it? How am I relating to each one of those age groups? Because really, it comes down to this. Would you say the fact that you, all right, so let me ask you all a question. This is a yes or no question. So give me a yes or no answer, all right? Are you a smart person? Oh, she's the only smart one here, she said. Okay, so let me go to this side of the room. Okay, are you a smart person? Well, I got to get my appointment book out for you guys. Okay, are you a smart person? Okay, there's a smarter side. Okay, so I'll talk to you. Okay, so you have to realize that the fact that you're here, that tells me that you're a smart person. All right? The fact that you want to learn more, all right? The fact that you want to know more, that's all good. But what you got to recognize is, does it make sense if I'm old enough, I'm smart enough, Jesus loves me, I love God, and I've got support around me? Why am I acting or reacting the way I do with my kids? My kids are 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years old, and I'm acting overwhelmed by it, overwhelmed or angry or frustrated, or all that stuff make me feel not important. They're not listening to me, like I'm not good enough. Think about that. Like, should that happen? The answer is no. That's your stuff. And that's what I want to get you out of. That's part of it. So depending on the age, now, the problem is as they get older, I'm getting ahead of myself, but up to about, once they start getting into puberty, which is 11 and 12, they get a mouth and a brain. And again, we don't know what to do with it, okay? So there's all these different stages. And then when they're 16, they get this thing called a car. You know, it's like, oh, it's worse. Okay, so what do I do with that? Okay, so once we get into that environment, how are we dealing with it? And if we don't know what to do with it, then find ways or help or talk to somebody to help you know differently, especially maybe people that have been through it before, or a professional or whoever. because don't do it alone. Because otherwise, you'll just continue to do the same thing that may be good or bad. Does that make sense? So, all right. And it's the temperament. So if they're strong-willed, how do you deal with a strong-willed child? Now, James Dobson's got a book out, The Strong-Willed Child. It's a very good book. So go after it. There's a ton. When we had kids 40 years ago, there wasn't anywhere near the kind of information there's out there now. Google it even, how to deal with a strong-willed child. It's amazing what you're going to find, all right? So do the research, and I'm not kidding. It's all right. All right. So any quick question? All right, let's go to boys and girls age. Okay, so little children, 1 to 5, okay? This is the exploration stage. So, first of all, what's important is talking and singing. You got to go at the level they're at. One thing that I have busy parents and parents that have a lot going on in their life, and they need their kids to understand. It's almost like we train them to be adults because we need them to do what they need to do because we don't have the time to be at their level, so they need to be at our level. And when they get older, what happens is we're putting too much on them, and they'll just take that on because they don't know what else to do. They're just going to adapt to the environment. So what you need to do is the talking, the babbling. Girls will tend to talk a lot more and ask a lot more questions than boys. And the major reason why is because the girls' talk center is right next to their pleasure center. So the more they talk, the more they feel good, literally. So you have to let them have that talk. If you shut them down, they're not going to feel good. And it's going to be a feeling that not good the rest of their life. And they feel like they don't have a voice, they're not allowed to talk, and then it goes into not important. My voice is not important, I'm not important. With kids, it just evolves into this hole because they don't know any better. That's why we got to get it out. So talking and like almost babbling, a lot of times singing, helps them learn to express themselves. Looking at them all this stuff helps to never feel alone as you talk to them. Holding them helps them learn how to trust, love, and be close. So the role model of hugging them helps them to realize that's what you do to feel good rather than, so if you want them to know what it's like to feel loved, love them. Parents that are not there for them to make them feel that love in the beginning, they're going to find that love someplace else when they're a teenager, and you're not going to like it. So if they feel loved by the people here, it's interesting. So the more I feel loved, I feel I'm important. So love creates importance, which creates a sense of value and a sense of respect. So everything from top down, this is a parent, this is a child, everything is top down. Love, trust, respect, and then, when you bring that from top down, that creates importance and value and good enough and worthy, all right? And so when that happens, but the problem is, I worked 45 years as a therapist, 47 or 48 years in healthcare. I was an ambulance first responder before that. So what happens is, and this is an epidemic issue, when parents are busy, or they either don't know how to love, they're too busy to love, and they just provide, but don't go beyond much of that. Because children want to be loved, they'll always then do love from bottom up. It's very, very common. When you go from bottom up, I still feel loved, but I don't know how to receive love. I just know how to give it. So I'll work with a lot of people that are adults, any age, and I'll say, they tell me that they felt, I always ask, did you feel loved by your parents when we get into how they feel about themselves? They said, oh yeah. And I said, well, then I narrow it down. How did you feel loved by your parents? Did they come to you and give you a hug for no reason? Well, no, not really. Did they kiss you for no reason? Like, did they say they loved you for no reason? Not really. So, I mean, they'd hug maybe when we're watching TV or something, but when you went to bed, did they kiss you goodnight? And a lot of people say yes. Who kissed who? Who approached who? Well, I went to them when they were watching TV or doing something, and then I went to bed. Okay, that creates my need to seek love, not receive it. So when they get later, this happens a lot with women, we tend to find the next generation in our life depending on what our comfort zone is. My comfort zone is to find that love because I need to get it because that's my MO. That's what I learned. So my role modeling is that by my seeking it, that's how I get love. So women especially will tend to seek men that are emotionless or men that are not there for them, because if men go after them and try to go out with them, they push them away because it's an uncomfortable feeling of being pursued. And then I see them on my office after that, and they say, and they're done. They want to be loved more now after they had kids. My husband won't love me. He was not there for me. Talking to Lou, I said, you married him that way. And I said, your dad was the same way, so it's the same thing. But I don't give up because I say, we just need to change that guy. But the problem is that's what he knows. That's his stuff. Now, the good part about it is it's all healable. It's all changeable, all right? It's something you don't have to stay with. You just have to realize what you're dealing with. Does that make sense? All right, so again, with kids, you want to set limits depending on their age because, you have to set the boundaries. Now, you need to be able to know it. So up to about that age, 4 especially, no is no. Don't go talking to them about it. You don't do, and I'm ahead of myself here. We'll get to disciplining in a moment, but you want to set the boundaries. They need to know what no is. Now, this is so fascinating. It's kind of counterintuitive. For kids up to about 4 or 5 even, they have boundaries, even though they don't like it, and they'll have a little tantrum about it because they want what they want. But boundaries actually create safety. Safety creates a sense of that I'm loved and that you'll protect me. And so you've got to recognize that there's 2 parts of here. You got the relationship, and you got the relationship. So the relationship, by the way, this is like a war sometimes. So you got to recognize, and this is more with teenagers, but the war is having a good relationship. The battle is getting there by them temper tantrums. I don't want to do this, not want to do what you want to do. But you need to use age of reasoning. So up to about 6 years old, 7, no is no. Because they need to know that you're going to be there and your no is no. So when they become a teenager, that they recognize that's the way it's going to be, and they don't battle you a lot because they know you've role modeled them into what that means. Does that make sense? So that, and then as you get a little older and they're able to talk it out and reason a little bit with you, because when they're below the age of reasoning, which is typically around 10 or 11, but usually I go under 8. You're just talking to the wall. They don't understand life. You're their life for them. So don't go reasoning about stuff they don't understand. That's like that. Just say no. You can't do that, right? And then you can give them a little bit of answer why, but they're going to try to talk you out of it. You understand? But you need to decide. It depends on the relationship. Now, after I said all that, here's the issue. If you love on them and they know you love them and they feel loved by you, they're not going to want to disappoint that love. So when you say no, then they'll go with it because they don't want to lose that by having to counter that a lot. The kids that you have the most problems with, especially as a teenager, are the kids where they weren't feeling loved and they have nothing to lose because there wasn't a relationship there to begin with in their mind. So it's all based on what relationship they believe that they have. And we'll get there, all right? So role modeling is everything. So you got to also role model everything you do. Like for example, uh, if mom or dad, whoever, makes dinner and everybody comes to the table, for example, and you want to go to the table and you want to come together as a family, and then when you're done, everybody should put their plate, like take responsibility. So whoever, let's say one of the spouses works and they didn't have, they they should also get up, take their plate over, and not expect mom to do it because then they'll expect mom to do for them. So at this age, and especially all the way up to teenager, I'll just tell you this: there's two things that are really important that I add, very simple things to help them feel connected. One is try to have a meal together every day. James James Dobson did some research, and he said that the more meals you have together as a family, the less discipline problems you have. And so, and I'll tell you why. It's because whenever I have a family that comes into my office and they're having difficulty with their kids or there's poor communication, whatever, I always give them homework to do the high-low game at dinner time. Play the high-low game. Okay, what is that? The high-low game is you go around the table, and depending on age appropriate, of course, and everybody gives their high of the day and their low of the day. What was it like? Especially if you're not there during the day with them, and you don't know what's going on. This is a great way to learn. Now, if mom's home with them all day, that's fine. Do the same thing. Mom or dad gives also their high and low of the day, age appropriate. All right, and to mom and dad, just kind of make something up, to some degree of what you think's going on. Now, here's the difference. You need to help these kids, even into 6 to 12. You need to help the kids learn how to express themselves, that it's safe to express themselves, that they have a voice, that their voice is important. That means I'm important. If I hear you and they listen, that means I'm important. That means I'm worth something. That means I'm valuable. It's all tied together. So when they give their high and the low, let's say they're on their low, and you say, "Oh, Johnny, I'm sorry you had to go through that. What was it like when you went through that?" Now, about 5 on down, you would help them with the emotion, with the feeling. Wow. Now, you can exaggerate a little bit and say, when I was your age, little white lie here, I felt the same way when someone did this. What was it like for you? Did you feel the same way? Yeah. And they said, wow, I'm sorry you had to go through that. What else? Would you like to tell me anything else? And usually, if it's new to them, no. If it's not new to them, they'll just go on and on and on about it. And that's how the telltale sign if they feel that you're doing it, okay? Now, if it was good, like the high of the day was, I did this with my friend. Oh, that's so exciting. Tell me all about it. What'd you do? Now, if you have a lot of kids and there's a lot of chaos with that, and they won't recognize their turn, what you do is you want to get an object of some sort, some fun little object that whoever has the object, it's their turn, and then you give it to the next person, all right? And that way they're learning how to feel. And now, I guarantee that if you do this on a regular basis, and even if you work different shifts, and the only time you have is breakfast, then do breakfast, all right? But you got to do something. I have people that will, and of course I don't know any of you in terms of what you normally do, but I have some people come to my kids don't talk, and we don't talk together. I says, what was it like growing up in your home? Did you eat together? No, we just watched TV and everybody just sat around and we ate when we wanted to eat. Like there was no, you got to create this. Otherwise you're going to regret it later. So I have found that the more communication and connection you have as a child, it role models for later on. So when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, this is what they expect. Now, if you have like multi-generational kind of like, or not generation, but age levels, and like you have like a 16-year-old and then you have like a 10 or 6-year-old and you're starting this, sit down with the teenager and say, hey, here's what we want to do, because they're not going to like it. Like they think it's stupid. Like everything's stupid, okay? So sit down with them and say, hey, I need your help. Get them on board to help out Junior. okay, or whatever. We're going to do this now to get them on board, kind of a little bit on the adult connecting. And then they'll say, okay, yeah, I could do that. And then they'll start enjoying it because they get the attention too. And mark my word, when you start doing this and make it fun and connect with them, they're going to think of things all day to come to the dinner table to tell you. And guess what? When they're 14, you won't have a problem with them telling you how life is, because that's normal. Does that make sense? I have a lot of parents that come to me as teenagers, and they don't talk to us, and we don't have a relationship. I says, well, what was it like growing up? Oh, I worked third shift, and, we weren't around very much. What do you do with that? So, well, it's time that you do it now. We'll get there later, and I'll tell you how to change that too. So, all right. Quick question with that? Okay, so helpful hints, tips. Remember that what you're dealing with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old. So you gotta allow yourself to dumb it down to their level, even if you working to that level. Share that time of exploration. Okay, the praise. Okay, and also with this age group, if you let them, they'll put their toys and their stuff like all over the place. And and they'll have a hard time picking it up because that's just, they just do that stuff. So if you want to limit things, you've got to limit it early on to a place where they do it. They don't do it in the living room, they do it in the playroom or whatever it is. So I understand. And also at the end, everybody watched the movie Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar, all right? Do you notice in spite of the fact it was a movie, it was the funness that came out of it. So I've done a lot of work with kids, all have boys, and they'll have all these stuff around and so on. And with the ability that you can, I will say, okay, who can get this such and such in that? You get 2 points when you get it in there. And they'll just make it fun. Now, here's what's going on though. This is time consuming. This takes more time. And a lot of parents nowadays don't have the time. And when you don't have the time, they know that. And they don't understand that, but they'll sense it later on because I'm not important. I don't know what else to tell you about it, but the point is that you're going to have to make time. If you decide to have kids, then you need to make the time. I don't have an excuse for that, and you shouldn't either. I mean, my docket of appointments is full. It was when I was counseling with people that just didn't feel important. And granted, it's busy, two-person household and so on, but I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, that's why you're here. I want you to help you do it, because whatever dividends you put in now, it's going to be great for you later. I guarantee it, all right? Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go to age 6 to 12. Okay, so the best, role modeling is, the best time is role model and teaching a lot of respect, love, and kindness. The same kind of thing. Now, they're getting older now, so they're learning more, okay? Which is obviously what you want. And so you want them to learn more and find their interests. And this is really important because as they get older, even as a teenager especially, I had to constantly try to figure out what are they interested in. And so I had to spend more time with them. And I didn't always have a lot of time because, a lot of you, I'm working all day, then I only have maybe 2 hours or 3 hours at nighttime. So let me share something. So isn't that kid really cute? Well, that's me. That's me when I was probably about 4 years old. And it was in Connecticut. No, it was in East Meadow. Long Island, my Long Island girl there, okay. So it was all about role modeling and like I said before, so as I got older, my dad worked a lot. So my dad was a pastor, and I'll be honest with you. So I'm the middle of 3 kids, and I was the normal one, because the middle child is always the normal one. And so, but my dad, But I did feel like I was the 200th child in the family because he had 200 other children that he took care of. I felt more than me, all right? And that's the congregation, all right? So, and he would come home, read the New York Times, like that's a big paper, and who lived in New York, and then he'd watch the news, take a nap, and go back to the church for a meeting. So when I got older and I had kids, I promised myself that I wouldn't do what my dad did, and I didn't. I mean, I came home, I didn't get a paper, I didn't watch the news. I mean, I'd listen to it a little bit here and there, but I'd come home and I'd play with the kids. The interesting thing about it is I played with them so much, my wife got a little jealous because I was giving them more attention than her. So we had to work that one out. But that's okay. We had to work through a lot because I didn't know. I mean, it's all learning. So it's almost like that give and take sort of thing, and I didn't know how to do that real well. So what I'm saying is that we have to recognize where we are, but the good thing is my wife did recognize, and she saw the same thing about needing to get that attention, and I gave that to them. And it's helped. I have a great relationship with my kids now, and we still did the high-low, 6 to 12. I mean, you could do the way up to their teenagers for that matter. You want to initiate the time for affection. As I mentioned before, my mom and dad were not that great huggers. In fact, my mom rarely hugged us. I don't think she actually did. She came from an abusive situation. They're both not alive now. And so we never got hugged from my mom. My mom gave me hugs starting when I was about 35 or 40. They lived in New York, so we would drive home and then I'd give her a hug, and she'd stand there like this when I give her a hug because she didn't know how to do it. So there was a lot of work that I had to do, my wife and I had to do, and I had to do especially because I didn't know how to love. But that's something that I had to work out, and because it was a learned behavior. My mom didn't know, she just did the best she knew, right? So being consistent with the rules. Now, again, you want to still say no, but see where they are in terms of their age, in terms of talking to you. You still want to make no as no, because that creates protection. So that when they're 14 and they want to go out to some boy's house that's having a party, no is still no, but because they feel loved by you, they don't want to disappoint the love rather than being unruly. They'd rather have the love than being unruly. Now, you could do something different and say, you know what, instead of that, how about if we have this Saturday, why don't we have a lot of your friends over here? Oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? So you got to give and take a little bit. So that helps them recognize that you'll work with them. The other most important thing is I had a lot of, so the second thing you can do, I mentioned the first thing is about high-low game. The second thing you could do, even at this age, which is really important, and I find it works really well, very simple, is, and you may already do it, but you go to them at nighttime. So they get ready for bed and so on. And I know it's a lot of work sometimes with kids, in the bath and so on, but when you put them to bed, do at least 3 things, if not 4. When you put them to bed, you want to tell them you love them. You want to give them a hug. And it doesn't have to be that order, whichever. You want to give them a compliment about them, like some positive word. And especially if it didn't go well that day. Let's just say there was discipline and you were disappointed and they knew it. You say, honey, things happen. I'm always going to love you and things happen, but you know what? Tomorrow's another day and we're going to do even better tomorrow, right? Yeah. And then you maybe even read to them, spend a little time. So what my wife and I did, so we had 2 boys. My wife would be with one, I'd be with the other, and then we'd switch. So that's throughout their life, from 0 on up. And so to how I know this worked is that my wife and I, my older son was 16. When he was 16, we were downstairs, my wife and I, watching TV or something. And our son, it was, getting to be 9 or 10 o'clock. My son comes to the top of the stairs and said, Who's going to pray with me tonight? So he wouldn't go to bed until we came up and did something with him. He was 16. Now, he wouldn't let us kiss him because he had a girlfriend. And so they weren't allowed to date until they were 16, at least individual dating. So the point is that, and they're just wonderful kids, have wonderful. He's got 2 daughters. They're gorgeous. I don't have a picture of them, but I'm not biased. They're just the most pretty in the world, right? Okay, so but anyway, you get my point. So so you want to be their parent, not their best friend. It's important that, and okay, I need to talk about the guilt factor, especially for women. Because the women bore the kids, it's very common that the moms will have more guilt than dads will when you come home and you haven't seen your child all day. Understandably, because you bore them for 9 months or whatever it was. And you're very close to them, and sometimes closer than the dad. That's not necessarily always the case, but. So the guilt factor is, when you come home, a lot of times the moms don't want to say no or give in a lot more or whatever it is because I feel so bad, I haven't been there for them. So you just got to watch that, because what will happen is they'll take advantage of that, and eventually they'll take advantage of it. And then you've got to be able to still say no, but love them in a different way. Like, spend the time when you can in other ways and letting them know. Even if it's in the morning, take them to school, take them out special, like going out, especially with girls, dads. You do something special like go out to lunch or go to school, go to their school and have lunch with them, or take them out to lunch when they're older, have breakfast with them. If you work 3rd shifts, I've had to tell a lot of dads, listen, you don't see them all, and they're going off to school, and you don't see them. I says, you have to have a meal with them. You have to say, well, it's too early to get up. I actually say, too bad. They're your child. You need to sacrifice. Well, I work so much. Well, then change your shift, because you're going to regret this later. And I'm pretty blunt about it, because I have to deal with people like that later on. And it's like, I'd rather cut it off now. I'd rather deal with it now and make something happen different than have to deal with it later when the damage has been done. Does that make sense? All right. Let's go on to helpful tips for 13 to 17, all right? So girls learn to be loved, boys learn to love. So girls, okay, let me back up. So up to age, from 0 to 3, the mom is the most important. She's the comforter, a nurturing comforter, and they learn a lot from that. Between 3 and 4, they push mom away and they look towards the dad, all right, to give him something, because dad becomes a higher power, so to speak, an authority figure, and the girls especially. So the girls will look to dad as, I want to marry him, especially if you are giving and loving and there for them, and because they want that. The boys then emulate the dad. The tool belt, the little, whatever the dad does, they want to do, all right? That's what's supposed to happen. Now, at puberty, what happens is a big shift, because the girls realize at about 11, oh, I can't marry my dad. So what happens instead, from 11 to 16, girls have their first love affair. That's what's supposed to happen, with their dad, emotionally, all right? Which means that dad needs to begin to take her out to show what it's like to be treated like a woman, like a girl, like respect and being loved in an appropriate way, in a safe way. So the more you show that and that love that you give, what happens is that's the role model. Now think about it. So between 11 and 16, I have my first love. So Girls have to learn, and so do boys, but they have to learn how to be loved, how to give love, how to talk it out, how to deal with conflict, how to pray with God, because they take all that knowledge with their first relationship and they take it into their second relationship, whether it's going to succeed or fail, from what they learned from their first relationship. You get that? Now, boys will emulate the dad in terms of the way he is, whether it's the macho dad or golfing or whatever dad does in terms of, helping out around the house or like being a protector, being responsible, all that stuff. All right? Mom is more the nurturing. So my son is, he loves his girls, and they're 3 and we're going to be 4 and actually 7. And they just spend all kinds of dad. And when they're around dad, they put their head on their shoulder and they just let's hang on him, okay? And he lets them. And so it's a nurturing sort of thing. But they get that love so much that when they get a teenager, they may not want to do what you ask, but because they love so much, they're going to do what you ask because they believe you love them and you're doing it for the right reason. Otherwise, if they don't feel loved, they don't care and they'll do whatever they want. Does that make sense? So it's got to be created. A relationship's created. So again, it's learning to build relationships back on your sheet. And because you're creating that relationship, you're creating it for them. So they don't know how to have a relationship later on. So I see a lot of adults later on who had a really poor first marriage or first poor relationship. And I asked her, what was your relationship with your dad? Either non-existent or it wasn't around, or he didn't know how to express himself. So they didn't learn how to have a relationship. Does that make sense? It's really a big responsibility. When I started counseling back in 45, 46 years ago, I would see maybe first time, maybe second time marriages. Now, since I retired, I rarely see first-time marriages. It's typically second, third, fourth. I've seen a couple of 7s and one 9th marriage. Who's got the problem? Somebody's got a problem here, okay? They both do, at least the person that keeps on marrying, and the person that says yes to them, So it's because it's always a throwaway society. Like, I don't need to change because I just get rid of something and go on to something else, but don't change why I feel that way. Commitment is really a lot of work. And my wife and I have had to do a lot of work together and talking and so on. And, I've gone to counseling several times. And so it's just a matter of dealing with what I'm realizing that's not right. And, my wife will help me, tell me what I need to do. That's why she's not here, because she'll keep on telling you, probably correct me a lot. Okay, so, no, but she's really good. So this is when I was about 12 or 13-ish, and that's me in Connecticut at another house we lived in, and what's in my mouth there, that's a pipe. Okay, that's the New York Times and a pipe and his glasses. I don't know if it's his shoes or not, but I was emulating my dad, and I didn't really know it, because that's what my dad did. So my dad would read the paper, and I remember when I was about that age, I went up to him and says, "You're always reading the paper." And I was basically saying to him, "You're never with me." And so I never really got the paper, and I didn't do it because I don't have an interest in that, because I'd rather have something interest that's better than that, especially the New York Times. But the point is that I want to have a better judgment of what I need to do for future. And we don't know at the time, My dad, my mom did not have good role modeling at all. My dad's dad and my mom's dad were both alcoholics. So, and my dad did a good job. My mom and dad really did a good job, really overall. It's just that the smaller things, my dad didn't hug us either, really, because that's not the generation. But we need to change that, right? Okay, so I'll go on. Change your attitude first. All right, so let me explain something. When I have a child that comes when I had a teenager that came to my office, And the mom and dad says, they've got an attitude, and they just go to the room, or we tell them to go to the room if you're going to have an attitude. And I'm thinking to myself, so the parents will say, well, why do you think they have an attitude? I don't know, they have a rotten temper or attitude. And I'm thinking like, but wait a minute, they're living in your house, and you're trying to have a relationship with them. Why do you think they have an attitude? It's you, okay? You create the environment, so they create the attitude, so they are responding to something that they're bothered about that you're not willing to listen. I said, don't send them away. Ask them what's going on. So it actually incenses me, just because I've had to go through it so often, having people say their kids have an attitude. Okay, you can have a bad day. Everybody does. But if it's on a regular basis, that just means there's something going on inside of them. Now think about it, though. Children are sponges. They learn from the environment. They have to. So children learn and respond to the environment. Who creates the environment? Parents do. Church does. School does. Find out what's going on. Does that make sense? So when my son was 12, he's 12, he was finishing 8th grade, he was depressed. I didn't see it. It bothers me that I didn't see it, but it was subtle, okay? You know, because you live with somebody all the time, you don't see things. When he started his 9th grade, I could see the depression because he didn't want to go back to school, and he also had a lot of acne and didn't feel good about himself, and it wasn't good. I mean, we did a lot of work that spent money to try to change that. So when he went back to school and I sat down with him, so I realized that, okay, I got to sit down with him. So I initiated sit down with him. He didn't really want to talk about it. Eventually he did. He says, I'm not leaving. When you have a kid that does have an attitude, they're not going to want to talk about it because either they don't think you care or nothing's going to change, or the reason why the attitude is they're angry at you. So one of the best things you could do if they don't talk to you just sitting on the couch is you go into their room and you take a pillow with you. You sit on the floor against their door if you don't think they're going to talk. And you sit down and say, what's going on, son? Or what's going on, daughter? And you can sit next to them or to start out with if you want. And if they don't talk, say, okay, you go get your pillow if you haven't gotten it already. Sit on the floor next door. And they say, what are you doing? He says, I'm not leaving until you talk to me. And I'll sleep here if I have to. And they'll say, well, I'm just going to go to bed then. Well, fine, I'm going to be here. It'll bother them because you're staring at them and sitting in their room. So they'll want to do it just to get rid of you, whether you like it or not. But eventually, it warms up to them because they do notice. They're not gonna love right away the fact that, they really like me or they really want to help me. No, you have to push it. Listen, you've got to be the assertive one, not them. Don't look for them to come to you for stuff. Like, stop it. They're just kids. You're the adult. Be the adult. Go after them. That's what you need to do from day one. You go out to take care of them. Just because they can wipe their own butt and speak and go to school doesn't mean they still need you to go after them, right? All right. I got my point across, right? Okay, so that's the attitude part. Any questions regarding the attitude stuff? All right. Okay, and because the role modeling is really important too, so that's really important. So as they talk less, initiate discussions more. So especially when they get it later on, if you've initiated a lot of conversations, and even if you did, what happens is, so when they get to be 13, 14-ish, what happens is they go from their focus goes from home, just shifts to outside the home because their perspective widens, because they now have these friends and they're no longer little kids, and it depends on how outgoing they are and so on. Okay, as that happens, you won't know what to do, and that's the shift. That's the natural shift of what's happening. So don't get alarmed. Just recognize that it is good that you want to have friends and do more. You're going to still have to have different boundaries, but you're also going to have to recognize that I have to initiate more. Okay, so the third thing that I remember, high-low game, talk to them at night. And the third thing that you could do that helps a lot, especially as they get older, is you have family powwows. Okay, so, and this is a weekly thing that you would do for them on a regular basis. You would meet with them and you'd ask them what's going on in the family. You can use it as a discussion section about what's going on. You can have two different types. One is a discussion about what's going on, any gripes that they may have, anything that you wanted to work through, family announcements about what's happening, and then you talk about that so they know that's an avenue to talk about. Plus, it's a role model about how to deal with stuff. You learn that you can talk about things and that you create it rather than shutting off and shutting down, all right? And this, the fourth one, I'll just tell you it now, is, and I'll talk about this later too, but the fourth one would be a fun night. Now, with little kids, you can have fun nights every night. Like, they don't, like, it's for them, every night's fun, okay? If you allow it, if you do it. But as they get older, to be, especially around 14, and they start getting more life, and they get into games and social media and all that, and whatever else goes on, you literally have to create it. So what's really important here is that, and it goes down to improving relationships with adult children. They're moving towards that, is that you have to be diligent about learning about their interests. One of the biggest difficulties that I had with our kids, in a good way, was that I had to keep up with. I really didn't know what to do with my kids. When they were teenagers, like, I don't know. I mean, life is different now as it was when I was a teenager, you know? So I fumbled around and I asked them to teach me how to use his Xbox, you know, and I was terrible at it, but I said, give me a handicap, okay? But teach me how. So we would do that. It was kind of fun that he tried to teach me and so on. I'd go out and play ball or play basketball, whatever it is. So create the opportunity. All right. So here's something you've got to understand. With children especially, when they start broadening their horizons, especially with teenagers, they're going to start creating their own world. That's a good thing, right? The problem is they're going to crowd you out of their world. So you've got to create the things like the powwow, like the fun night. So when our kids were teenagers, they had friends and they wanted to go, and there were people on our block, especially when they're in walking distance, and they said, well, and I say, well, we're having our family night. We called it a family night on Thursday, and we would do something together, and play a game or do whatever we do. Maybe watch a short movie. I didn't tend to do a lot of movies with my kids unless it was a constructive movie. Don't just do a movie for the sake of a movie, because there's no constructive value to it unless there's something valuable in the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like teachable something. But as we get older, the fun night was a Thursday night at 7 or whatever, before they had to go to bed. They said, oh, I need to do something with my friend. He says, that's fine. You can do something with your friend before that. We can adjust it maybe 6:30, but we're having a fun night. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. All right, that's what we're doing. So interesting. Okay, my kids, I have one set of my kids and their two children in Chicago, another set in Cincinnati with 2 kids. And then at one time, one was for many years, one was in California and the other one was in Alaska, in Anchorage. So we had like a 3-hour and a 4-hour difference. But what I did is I'd text them and I'd say, okay, when are you ready to have a family night? We still do family nights, and they wouldn't do it unless I initiate it. We still have family nights. But the cool thing about it is I initiate it, and they get on the phone, and my kids are talking to each other, you know, my brothers and daughter-in-laws, and we have our grandkids come on now. It wouldn't happen unless I still initiated it. But the point is, it's got to happen, because it's still part of it. But you know what? they accept it. In fact, they really like it now. But I started something, so we're initiating it, and you can continue it. But it's part of what we do, and chances are they'll do it in their family. Does that make sense? So it's in terms of what you want to do. Okay, and the other thing I need to bring up is this. So when they started broadening their world and their environment, remember now they're 15, 16, 17 years old, unless they have a good relationship with them and it's something you do this on a regular basis, hey, let's go do such and such. And if they're playing Nintendo or there's something on social media or whatever, they're not going to want to go because this world, their world is becoming more exciting than your world. Don't get so disappointed about it. Just work it differently. Recognize that you gotta somehow pull them in and create that to meet them halfway. Say, hey, I'm going to, and I had to come up with something that we could do together, like go play putt-putt or learn to play golf together or do something. Otherwise, you're not going to do anything because this side is going to be always more important because I'm boring or I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do anything he knows how to do. Well, that's probably true, but even though I did bore you and I raised you, okay, I mean, other than that, but the point is that I've got to then get into their world and create that together. So if we're going to go as a family someplace, let's say part of our family is going here and I want them to go, and they don't want to go, and it says, well, we really want you to go. This is something we want to do as a family. I've had they're 2 years apart. So one wanted to go, the older one didn't really want to go, but the younger did want to go because we're going to go play putt-putt, and he didn't want to go. I said, no, you're going to go because what I want to do as a family. And this is when he was about 16, 17. I said to him, listen, and I had to sit down with him, I said, or talk to him guy to guy. I said, look, we're not going to have you around much longer. We want to still do stuff as a family because we love you and we want to do this. I said, don't push us out because we want to still do stuff. Now, because we did it before, it was more acceptable because it was something you do. If we didn't do it at all, it would be really odd. You'd probably have to push it some more. So start as much as you can. And so, does that make sense? You got to help. You got to work it some, but also recognize that making it important. And so their importance, you want to make them important. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So any questions regarding that? Yes.
Can you elaborate a little more on the family powwow? I don't think you expanded much on that, and can you give examples too for like if you have multiple age children?
Yeah. Okay. So, like with you want to know more about the powwows. So the powwows could be really whatever you make it, but if there's a grievance issue or somebody, I'll either use it as a way of settling a problem. I'll use it as a way of just kind of connecting with them about what's going on, about a family, about things happening, especially if they're really busy as a teenager. Now, if you want to connect more, and especially then if you want to, a powwow could also be, and I separated the two. I had activities day, like on Sunday, in the past, we always went out on a Sunday, had a family day, like when they were like 10 years old, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They were more manageable because they didn't have their own world yet. So I would create that. We would always do something fun. Get an ice cream, go play putt-putt, or just ride our bikes somewhere. I would always have an activity because I'm working all the time, and I want to create that. As I get older, I try to separate out because as I get teenagers, there's always something in the house we got to deal with. So I would do that. Now, if you have younger kids with older kids, the older kids are going to not want to do as much because of the age difference, and they're going to like complain a lot more. What I do is, again, as I did with the high-low game, I would pull them in and talk to them privately and ask them to just work with me. Like try to work with them as if you're needing their help to make things work. And usually they like that because you're appealing to them at an older level. Like I know the kids are younger, and you need them help, and hey, can you work with me on this? Does that make sense? So the powwow, you can do it. Now, if there's a problem in the house, for example, you could have one at any time and say, call a powwow. You can name it anything you want. But if there's a problem, there's got to be a way for solution, because if you don't deal with things, then it turns into an attitude, it turns into resentment, and then that turns into distance. And then the distance creates then lack of a family connection. And it's hard to get back to that unless you deal with something. And then they harbor it. And then just more stuff happens. If somebody gets teased a lot and then you don't deal with it, nip it in the butt, what happens is it gets more and more, and then they get really angry, and then they won't return. Does that make sense? Okay, so improving adult relationships. How many kids have, and this could even really include like 16, 17, 18 and up, really, okay? Especially 17, 18, when they really got their own life, so to speak. And if you're not there, your kids will be there, okay? So all along, as they expand their life, I'm always having to expand my ways of dealing with them, or my learning their interests. What can I do differently with them? How can I get into their life? And sometimes I'd sit down and say, hey, I want to do more with you. I get really honest. I said, I really want to do more with you. What could we do together and have fun at it? I'll ask them, like, why not, right? And so if I have a good relationship already, they'll participate and want to do it because they'll want that with me because they feel loved. If there's no relationship, you're going to be a little bit harder because they don't care. Look, their caring about the relationship starts from the top down. Otherwise, what happens is if they don't feel like care, they're going to want to do this, but the problem is it'll always be more strained. All right? Also, to let you know something really important, and I do this in my healing seminars or my healing conferences. So I want to talk about the relationship with God, their relationship with God. We always want them to have that. But we don't know who God is when we're born. We don't know who God is. We don't know about, because His Spirit is there, but we don't know that. That's why God gave us a mom and a dad. I mean, that's a big part of why we're there, to have an authority figure. So through the relationship with our first God, which is our earthly father, we learn to deal with, we learn that it's like a representative of a higher power, of authority figure, of being loved, of learning how to communicate. So when I have a person that I'm praying for that doesn't have a good relationship with God, they can't hear the God, can't see the God, they can't feel the God, and all that, they don't feel loved by God, I always ask them, what was your relationship with your dad? And usually it's not very good. And so that's a big issue, and it can be resolved because we just work on the relationship and they realize that your earthly father is not your heavenly father. But I don't know the difference. Now, as we get older, we would, but the problem is it's all intellectual. Most people in mainline Christianity has an intellectual relationship with God, but not an emotional one, especially if you grew up with a non-emotional dad or there was no emotional connection. You understand? So that's why show that interest and find that interest. Show an interest in resolving conflict rather than allowing it. If your relationship is poor, then let me go to my notes here. So you got to recognize that God wants you to have that relationship so you can learn, because your father creates your worth, your mother creates your comfort. And so a lot of times our sense of worth comes out of what our dad is like and how we're treated. In most relationships with teenagers, this is what we feel a lot of times. Now, so the ages 9 to 17, it's very common. See, puberty is around 9, 10, 11, 12. And raising these children, and depending on how close you feel with them, and if there's not the closeness, you're going to definitely feel like that, like their waywardness and their difficulties, and you feel like it's just going to be the death of you or them, right? But here's the reality, and this is what more than not what happens, especially if you create that relationship. And if you don't have one, there's always room to create it. This is really what happens. All right? So you just have that rough water between like 13 and 17. It's very common because they're exploring the world. They have a voice now, they have a brain now, and they're trying to use it. But you got to help them regulate it. Otherwise, they'll just go off on it. And, that's part of having a relationship. You regulate it by having a relationship. Get into their world, ask them out for breakfast or lunch or something. If they don't want to go, say, I really want to go and have breakfast with you. Will you go with me? And even if you have to do a little bit like, you're not going to be here much longer because I know you're going to go on and go to college or whatever you want to do, and I really don't want to lose you.